ALTBAYS.
ALTBAYS. Kia ora, Fano! We're live, ALTBAYS show, brought to you by ALTBAYS.nz every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. on YouTube. The best way to support our platform is to subscribe to our channel. There's a little button right at the bottom there. You hit the subscribe button, and then you see when we're live. If you hit the notifications bell, right? There's a little bell for that. Yes. Okay. If you are not watching us live, it's probably because you are listening to us, because we're also on all the main podcast platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. After the show, on the next day, you can listen to these beautiful chats and recommend it to your friends so more people get to know about our platform and what we're up to. If you want to run your show, if you have an idea, if you want to start your YouTube channel, or if you want to do some video productions, you keep in touch. ALTBAYS.nz, you let us know what you're up to, and then we'll give you a hand. Okay? This is a very special week for us. We're having a lot of fun, as always. We put a lot of work into this. Taylor and I, I've been in this community for 9 years. Taylor's been here for maybe a little bit less than that, maybe 7.5. And we like the word community minders. That's what we are. Of course, we want to expand this. We want to take this to a national level, even worldwide level, who knows? But our heart is here, like we love the people who live in this place, and we would never do anything to jeopardize this relationship, to ruin this. So focus on the people who know how to play smart and respect what we're doing. And if you don't respect, it's fine. You just don't have to watch it. It's good. It's okay. Okay. So we have this amazing show here tonight with Kim Lawry. He is the project manager of the Mercury Bay Environmental Trust. It's going to be an amazing chat. On Wednesday, we have Brent and Larissa McCown. I think that's how you pronounce their last name. They run a very successful tattoo studio in Tairua. Amazing people. It's going to be a great show. If you can watch that show on YouTube, I think you're winning, because they look amazing. And then on Friday, we have the adult entertainer and masseur, New Zealand Dan. And I got some different messages from different people about how cool that is. And some people also demonstrated a little bit of concern about bringing those topics. So if you are from New Zealand and you forgot, pornography and prostitution are legal in your country. It's not my country, okay? So, and if you fear that this topic will not be good for children, then you gotta trust the platforms where we're on, because when we start a live stream, we always hit this show is 18 plus. It's rated for 8, right, Christine? Thank you. So
it's not made for kids.
It's not made for kids. If you are watching in your channel and the kids are engaging, good on you, because I do my best to bring topics to the table that are relevant for the children. Because I'm a teacher, I work at the school.
So we don't R18 it, it's just not made for kids.
Sorry, not R18, it's not made for kids. So YouTube made that recommendation. It's not gonna go for children, okay? And then it's your choice. And of course, we're gonna make a disclaimer on Friday that the show that is about to start is gonna
will be no naked people or anything.
Oh yeah,
on it.
I know that you guys want more. I know that you guys want to see us, more like relaxed.
Subscribe to Leo's other channel for later.
Yeah. Do a little bit more research, and then you'll find my other profiles. Ta-da-da-da-da-da. But it's just a conversation. And the reason why we're running this show is getting hot, Taylor. Ooh, can you put the aircon on? The reason why we're doing this is because we support conversations, dialogues. I don't know what you're up to until I talk to you. If you're gonna judge me, then you have a problem. If you hate me, you have a bigger problem, because hate is a pretty bad feeling to have within. It's gonna damage you, might bring you cancer. So Send us a message. If you don't agree with what we're doing, maybe you should be a guest and come have a cool debate with us. Might go viral. On my left, Christine. Boom.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Was it okay?
Yeah.
Did I miss something?
No, I don't think so. You dived a lot into other stuff, but that was cool.
Well, it's live. It's natural.
Yeah.
It's good, isn't it?
We'll leave the link for your other subscription channel.
Yeah.
down below.
Well, but that was you. That was not even me. That was you. I'm not in any of those other ones. I'm on Instagram, Magri Leonardo,
Yeah.
and I post cool pictures of me playing music. No, and videos and
Yeah.
stuff. So,
That's good.
are you on Instagram?
Yes, I am.
What do you use your Instagram for?
I don't know. Pictures of the family, pictures of where I'm going, where I've been.
Is Facebook outdated? Or it fits a purpose?
I feel like Facebook does its thing where it needs to be. Like,
Yeah?
yeah. But for a vibe, Instagram's where it's at.
Yeah? What about TikTok?
Oh, yeah, I like TikTok.
TikTok?
Yeah, do like TikTok.
Our TikTok page is growing.
Yeah,
Yes.
massive. Gonna do some more TikTok dances
It's cool. Yeah, I know, right?
on Friday.
We... Thanks, Taylor. On point.
Yeah.
Cool. We might bring the whole team
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Christine, how is it to watch Matarangi growing and developing?
I think it's pretty cool. There's some days, like, in the last couple of days, we've had a lot of trees put down, like, you know, cut down and stuff around the shops and stuff, and it's real weird to see how open the space is. But that's about it. Nothing major's happening right now. Like, you got the development happening, but not really anyone building yet. So I guess we'll find out next year when all the houses are up. Yeah.
Right. I'm asking because I think the development part of this place, it will be relevant to our chat tonight.
Definitely, yeah.
So as I said just before, we have the pleasure to chat with Kim Lawry. Hi, Kim.
G'day. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. You know, it's a busy time of the year for us, but it's nice to come in and have a chat to you guys and talk about what we're up to.
Thank you so much. So I made a little intro, and you've done a few things in life, a few cool things, but let's go for what's happening right now. So Mercury Bay Environmental Trust. For the alien who doesn't know what we're talking about, what do you guys do?
Look, we're a charitable organisation that we're only small. We grew out of the language school here in town, and we're looking for ways that we can contribute to our community, basically by doing environmental work. You know, there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen. There's a huge demand for native plants, and we find ourselves in a position where maybe we can help meet that demand and spread a bit of the knowledge that we're gaining across the community. So we're just trying to take advantage of where we are, where we find ourselves, and doing some good at the same time.
What are the main projects that you guys get involved, or it changes all the time? It depends on what's happening.
It depends a little bit on the time of the year. Sure, it changes. At the moment, the heart of the trust business is the Native Plant Nursery, because so many of the things that we get involved with need plants. So the nursery was relatively small when the trust was formed. 2.5 years ago, just around the time COVID arrived, you know, is when we set the trust up, and the nursery was relatively small, and as we started to engage with other conservation groups, other community groups, councils, DOC, WRC, all of those people had demands that were far greater than we were able to meet, and if we were going to be effective in doing what we were doing, we had to be able to supply bigger orders of plants. Otherwise, we'd just get bypassed, and they'd go and look in other places. So we set about growing a nursery, which at that stage it was only in my backyard. So we'd set the nursery up in my backyard, basically, using students from the language school to help us make it happen. My backyard was starting to overflow. We had plants in one or two places around town. They were anyone that had a spare section or an empty garage found themselves with plants in it. So we had to move from that scenario into something more permanent. And we were very fortunate to get hold of a piece of land in the Waterways project. So it's a piece of land that will eventually be part of the canal project, but it's not required by them at this stage. It's away from where they're working. It's towards the end of the project, and they were prepared to give us this piece of land to create our nursery because there was some value, in us doing that. When I say value to the community. So we took on a piece of land that was it was a rough farm pack, and over the last 18 months, we've turned it into an operating nursery. We built most of the structures ourselves. It's not perfect, but it certainly meets all our needs, and we're turning out a lot more plants than we were at the time that we headed down to that side.
Is there any connection with the government from what you do, or councils, the trust? Because what makes a trust?
Well, a trust is it's like a business entity, okay, or it's an entity that you operate under, but it's unlike a business in that it operates as a charity. Okay, so we have a group of trustees who basically form the governance level. Okay, and we have certain criteria that we have to meet to be a trust, but basically it gives us an entity to operate under, so that we can be GST registered if we wanted to be. We can receive donations. Which is it's a really big part of it, actually, is we can receive donations and actually give people tax credits for donations that they give to us. So there is an incentive for people to be supporting a trust. They also or it also allows us to what am I trying to say here? It also allows us to operate in a way that we can sell plants, okay, but we don't have to pay tax.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's like a green church.
Yeah, and it's a little bit like a green church. Yeah. But
thanks, Taylor. Bit late, but fine.
But he got there, didn't he?
Yeah.
Got it there.
Yeah. So it's an entity that is supported by the government, if you like, but not directly.
Yeah. And by the way, I prefer the green god. Thank you for that. So who are the main clients? Who are the people who actually come and are the ones, for example, working on development in the area, or people more like doing projects in their own land? How does that part work?
Okay, so being a trust, we being charitable, we have some advantage over nurseries that are running commercially. Okay, because we're not trying to turn a profit. Okay, any money that comes out of selling our plants goes back into the trust, okay, and the trust would use it for its projects or to pay the one employee that we have. Because we see ourselves as having an advantage over some other nurseries, we've got to be careful where we sell our products, or we think we should be careful, and we won't really compete with local garden centres or that sort of thing. Right. So we sell our plants into restoration projects. Okay, so if you have a hectare of land, at Kuatunu, and you want to restore that land and put it back into bush, then that would be okay. We would supply that, But if you're planting your backyard, we're not likely to supply that.
Right.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Most of the plants go into larger restoration projects. A lot of them go. There's a lot of dune plants, sand dune plants that we grow. So they go into all of the dune projects that WRC and TCDC operate under the Coast Care banner. Okay. So Coast Care here runs from Whangapua right down to Whangamata. And while we don't supply all those plants because it's a huge number of plants that they require, we supply a large number, particularly in the more local, the local restorations.
Got it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when I think about restoration, I think about damage. You know, there's a problem, and then you restore.
Yeah.
Like again, you correct me, but like just to see if my train of thought here makes sense. Not that long ago, when people were pretty much taking a lot of resources from the land, which is something common with any colonization process that
Still
happening. But then like people would just, take everything they could. So I would be surprised to find out that there was care for, let's preserve this part or that part. Maybe there was, but like I'm just not familiar. And then years later, we realize, okay, let's do something because natural disasters start to happen and shit start to happen. So beautiful work start to be done. And then you guys, yay, great. The developments, the things that are happening right now, do you feel like that there's more care when it comes to that? People come to you guys or even to all the trusts and around the country?
I think that there is a need to because the powers that be insist on it, to a certain extent. But there has been a change in attitude as well. A classic perhaps example of what you're talking about is our wetlands. The wetlands in New Zealand have been drained for years and years and years. In fact, the organisations that now protect our wetlands used to advise farmers to drain that swampy area because it's unproductive and we've got to get that land into production. Yeah. Now we're realising the folly of those ways, and we're trying to put the wetland back to how it should have been, or maybe even was in those times. So we are realising, we are learning as we go along that some of the things that we've done in the past perhaps are not as wise as they might have been. And we are faced with big tasks to try and get that environment back to how it should be.
Right. So when you say the wetlands, now what do we know that it's so important to actually maintain those areas if we still have them? Well,
they work a little bit like a soak, or like a set of lungs almost. That when the waters from inland, from our catchments, are coming down to the sea, there's a spreading out of waters and a soaking up of that volume. Okay, even in reverse, when water's coming in from the sea, if we have big tides running up our estuaries, if there are strong wetlands, they will soak and take up a lot of that water and nullify, or at least mitigate some of the damage that could occur at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And we just recently had this weather bombs.
Oh my God.
That was crazy. Actually, Christine was saying that last time that she was here in the show a couple of weeks ago, she was worried of not maybe.
Yeah, there was that huge slip between here and Matarangi, and my husband called me before I left here to say, just be careful, there's a slip. And I thought I'll just try it. I said I'll text if I don't get through, but there's enough for my car to slip around it, but.
Is there anything that when it comes to restoration and having the right plants around areas that are at risk that can be done, or actually there's nothing to do with this kind of?
You know, I think it comes down to the intensity of the problems that we're getting. You know, and it seems to us, I don't know whether this is true, but it certainly seems that the rainfall events are bigger. They're more intense. You know, the weather patterns that we have are sitting for longer, and so we are certainly suffering from some sort of climate change or some sort of adjustment to what we're all used to, and sometimes I think those events are too big for plants to actually make a huge difference. The more that we have plants along our riparian edges, so the rivers and streams, the better prepared we are. But if the amount of water coming down is too significant, then you know we still have to deal with it at this end, and you know that's one of the issues that we have, I guess, with where our population centres are. Our population centres are often at flashpoint areas, you know, on a sand spit or on a river floodplain. That's where we like to build we have always liked to build our settlements, and there is a consequence to that.
What is the main work done at beach, like the beachfront areas? Because I see always like you guys put posts, we're gonna do the restoration, like come and support the planting. Why and what kind of work is done?
Okay, so the planting, there's often a bit of misconception about the dune plants that we put in because we're never going to stop the erosion by putting plants in. You know, that's not the aim of what we're doing. The plants are there to protect the dune and to help the dune recover after the event. Okay, so we've got to put the right plants in the right place. And one of the issues that we have is that we've built our settlements so close to the margin. Okay, this is a dynamic zone. The margin between the land and the ocean is a dynamic zone, and we've put our settlements as close as we can, and it leaves us with very little land to create a buffer. Now, if you've got a wide dune and a healthy dune, and I think like Otama. There's for most of the Otama Beach, there's no settlement near, you know, and there's a big, tall, healthy dune.
Yeah.
Okay, and the spinifex plants, which is the main plant for the front of the dune, they run down off the dune towards the sea, right? And when there's a big storm, we will still lose sand from around the front of those plants, but the plants will gather the sand back really quickly as the winds come in and blow towards the land, towards the dune, which is sloping upwards. Those plants will regather and hold the sand. So they're not designed to stop, or they're not intended to stop the erosion. They're intended to repair the dune. And so in a situation like we have here in Whitianga, we have no room to have the system operating as it should. And for much of our beach, we have a very, very narrow strip of back dune plants, but not an effective front dune plant system to do what is supposed to be done. And so you know, we're almost destined to fail unless we take a very bold step and retreat the dune. And it's very interesting that, you know, there's been an experiment done this year at Pauanui, because Pauanui have a very similar problem, and they had a drop off from the reserve down to their beach of 4 to 5 meters. Okay. Now, what happens if you have a drop off is it's a very steep bank. The waves, when they are crashing in a storm event, crash into the to the wall, which is a straight wall, and undermine it.
Yeah.
Okay, so they'll undermine it, and more of it'll break down. What we need is a slope, a long slope towards the sea, so that when the waves come in, they tend to roll up that slope, particularly if there's plants on the slope. However, if that slope is too close to the sea, as we've seen here in Whitianga, it just eats away.
Yeah.
So at Pawanui, there was a big discussion, and the community got involved, and the coastal. We've got a great coastal scientist here, and he got involved with the discussion, and they actually convinced the I won't say all the people, but certainly enough of the people that the science it made sense, and that we just needed to move the dune back. So they brought in a bulldozer. There was a big bulldozer sitting on there, which you can imagine how people felt about that. People were pretty nervous about that. But instead of having if you consider having a bank that's 4 meters tall, in the past we would have pushed sand up and filled in the gap. Okay, filled in this gap, but we already know that the sea will come right up to where the base of that wall was. Yeah. So it was a little bit pointless. We were losing this sand every time we did it. But now they've taken that back. Okay, and the slope now comes to where the bottom of the wall was before, or thereabouts. So much more effective. It gives the dune plants time to establish, and so long as we don't get any huge storms doing massive damage there this year, maybe those plants will establish, be somewhat stronger, and when there's erosion damage in the future, they will actually be able to regather the sand, repair the dune, and we won't get that big drop-off that we've been having before. That's the hope. So that's the type of work that's happening on the beachfronts.
Beachfronts.
Yeah, and the situation of where the houses are in relation to the sea on this dynamic zone has a big bearing on what we can and can't do.
Yeah. So I guess it's a tricky one, because you're talking to the house owners, explaining what has to be done, and they're like, "Oh, but this is going to affect my house." But you see it's affecting the house anyway, if not now, soon.
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. It may be somewhat controversial, but those very valuable houses, and they are very valuable houses, but if they're right on the front line, they're only as valuable as the next buyer, and if the protection is not adequate, or if the lawn is being chewed away by the sea, the next buyer that comes along may not be so keen, and that high value may not remain so high. The other issue that we're facing, and this is happening all over New Zealand and other parts of the world too, is insurance companies are looking at those houses in those situations and saying, well, guys, I'm not sure that we're going to want to actually insure this house. Or they're saying, well, we'll insure it, but this is the price. And the worry is, or one of the concerns is that the overseas companies who underwrite the New Zealand companies are starting to look at New Zealand and say, well, there's been an awful lot of weather-related disasters here. Yeah. We're not so sure how much longer we want to underwrite unless you change your policy, or unless the local insurance companies change their policy. So it's a difficult one, because that will affect us all.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how much greedy man has, nature wins.
Yeah.
Well, I tend to think nature wins in the end. Yeah. We've been beating up, or trying to beat up nature ever since the start of the Industrial Revolution. But often we have to, at some point, realise that some of those things that we've done are not quite right. And let's try and remedy some of them,
Have you come across any people who have been very against what you're doing?
Oh yeah, we run into them all the time.
He almost didn't make it up here, Christine.
But generally, there are strong beach care groups in all of our communities. There are always people who think we're wasting our time, and we suffer losses. Like we don't win all the time, and it's frustrating for us to plant a dune area, and to go back a year later and see half those plants disappear into the sea.
Yeah.
But there's two approaches we can take. We can walk away, throw our hands in the air and say, well, that doesn't work. Or we can plant more plants, or we can try and keep that buffer zone there. Because once the buffer zone is gone, you're left with a rock wall. And, much as there are people who think a rock wall is the answer, there's a trade-off. Your trade-off is you lose your beach.
Yeah.
Okay, and you certainly lose your beach at high tide.
Yeah.
And the more sea level rise you get, once there's a rock wall, the more you lose your beach. And I know, if I walk down our beach here in the summer,
Got to stop. Got to stop.
Yeah, the people
Walk
are all
back.
the people are all enjoying the beach where there are plants behind it or where there is no wall, but no one's sitting down in front of the wall because the beach isn't actually pleasant there. So there is a trade-off, and there's still a huge debate to be had here in town. Because if we do get sea level rise to the extent that we're being told we will, then there may be some harsh decisions that need to be made here.
Okay, so let's say that everybody had a good night, maybe had a good night with their partners, woke up feeling great, and then they say, you know what? Let's trust Kim. What should we do? So when you say drastic and harsh decisions, what does it mean? What is actually hard, but in your view, efficient thing to be done?
Well, look, there's two choices. There's two choices, perhaps, that will be considered. One is protect, okay, and that means more rock walls, and one is retreat. And managed retreat is something that's talked about quite a lot.
Does it take long?
Yeah, absolutely. And managed retreat can only be effective if it's over a long period. If we turn around and said, hey, half of Whitianga has to shift in the next 2 years, you ain't going to sell that. But maybe if we said, hey, there are some parts of our town or any town that over the next 50 to 60 years can't be, we can't expect to be able to live in that part. And we set in motion a process that allows those people to make the moves they need to move, or make the moves they need to make with dignity.
Yeah.
And put in some financial assistance or whatever we have to put in, so that we can move away. All of our buildings have a limited life. Most of them will be replaced at some stage anyway. And maybe if there's a couple, my age living in a house, you say, well, look, you can live there. You can live there till the end of your time. But maybe at the end of that time, we have to think of something different rather than just, giving it to the next generation or having it sold or whatever it is. There may be some method that we can use to move people away from some of the highest risk areas.
Yeah.
If it's a whole town that's at risk, then maybe the formula becomes different. But that's a question that does float around still.
It's a tricky one because it involves your family, your patrimony, what you achieved.
Just where the town is at now, is there any places where you think it's like you're done?
Here we go.
What do you want me to say here?
Suddenly the numbers start to drop.
Yeah, like,
You know, there
or
are
rising just to see
Or
where
rising,
it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
no, there are parts of Whitianga that are under threat. It's interesting though because the threat here, as far as we understand it, is not erosion. Not erosion coming this way, but it's sea level rise and inundation because we're such a low-lying town.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know how much sea level rise can we handle before we start having flooding? And when we look at these flooding events, we look at not how it is every day, but we look at storm events, king tide events, and what happens if you have a king tide and a storm and huge rainfall up in the hills.
Yeah.
You know? So what happens in that scenario? And how prepared are we for it? That's when some of the low-lying areas in town will flood. And the question that you have to ask yourself is, if we have that situation once every 10 years or once every 20 years, is that tolerable? And maybe you would say, well, yeah, you know, we can live with that. But what if it becomes twice every 5 years? You know, where is the point where we have to say, well, it's no longer acceptable for our community? You know, you talk about the road to Kuatuna being under a slip. What about the Wade? You know, when
Wade Road.
the Wade out there, you know, we accept now that it floods, twice, 3 times a year maybe? We get floods out there where there's some disruption to traffic.
It's already been 3 times this year, hasn't it?
Probably is, yeah.
Yeah.
So where is the tolerance level for us on a place like that? Matarangi, you know, the causeway going into Matarangi, the causeway going into Whangapua. What's the tolerance level and what can we do? So, you know, there's certainly plans afoot in all of those areas. Mm-hmm. Certainly there are plans afoot, and really it just comes down to where do we draw the line in terms of a community saying, hey, we can't really put up with that any longer. And you know, the shoreline management plan that's been kicked around for the last 2 years is looking at all of those things. And what we have to be able to do is to say, this is the point that we can't tolerate anymore, but somewhere before that there's got to be a trigger point where we say we got to do stuff now, otherwise we're going to be at this other point. And so those plans that are being constructed are trying to do that.
Kim, do you do some research, or like do you keep up with what's happening in other countries? Because I remember not that long ago some Pacific islands talking about those issues and actually asking New Zealand for some, I don't remember if it was support or just for attention, but like, is it something that you kind of keep your eye out to see examples of what's happening around the world?
Yeah, look, I don't know that in my role that's what I need to do, you know, but certainly I know that those that are driving those decisions are well aware of that. I think when we were talking this through, we were told that some 20 million people around the world have been managed in retreat away from the sea in the last 20 years.
Wow.
Wow.
So that managed retreat is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, whether it's feasible for us to do that in New Zealand as the sea level rise issue does or doesn't occur, you know, because it happens everywhere at once. It doesn't just happen at Whitianga, you know, that sea level. We're one of the more vulnerable communities, us and part of Thames. We are perhaps slightly more vulnerable on the peninsula than other places, but there are lots of places that are suffering from the same sort of predicament.
Yeah, it's deep.
I asked about the other parts of the world because I wanted to do kind of like a segue to and go one step back of how this idea came about for you, the environmental trust, because it was a project that actually started with your prior business. Can you take me through that a little bit?
Yeah, sure,
please?
sure. For me, it's a really cool story because we came, my wife and I came to Whitianga in 2003.
From
Tokoroa. So we were dairy farmers in Tokoroa. We'd holidayed up here for a number of years with our family, like so many people, you know, and it's relevant to the discussion that we were having a moment ago. We came here because of the beach, okay? And that's important to remember because I think one of the greatest assets that this town has is its beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that's what brings a lot of people here originally. So we came here and, you know, I had this grandiose idea that I might semi-retire, but we had always had, you know, a close association with students. When our sons were growing up, there was always kids around our house, and they'd both done overseas trips, and we had other students staying with us, and so we came to Whitianga. We moved into a new house, and it was just Darby and Jones rattling around, and so we thought that getting involved with hosting students would be a good idea. So we contacted the local language school and hosted some students, and got to know how the language school operated. And it was a year or so later that we saw the language school advertising for a part-time activities teacher in the afternoons, which, you know, it sounded like a bit of me. It sounded like great fun. We would go along, and I would meet a group of students, and we would load into a van and go off and do something from, you know, it might have been boogie boarding, might have been a bushwalk, it might have been going fishing or whatever it was. And so that was my first association with the school as a part-time teacher. And I did that, I suppose, for a couple of years. And the then owner of the school came to me one day, and he said, look, the manager of that department was leaving, and would I be prepared to take over the management role of that activities department? And that was a great opportunity for me. So I did that. It wasn't a full-time job, but, you know, it was a heap of fun.
Yeah.
And it gave us some insight into the type of people that were coming to the school and the things that they were looking for. And I think that lasted about 4 years. And at that stage, the Morris, who owned the school, who I'd been working for a while then, decided, look, he didn't want to do it anymore. He'd been in that game for a long, long time. I think the school had been running for 20 odd years at that time, and he wanted to move on. But there weren't any buyers around. You know, the language school industry wasn't booming at that particular time. It was difficult here in Whitianga to run that school successfully. I think it was difficult anyway, and there was no one on the horizon. And he got to the stage that he was talking about just closing the doors and stopping. And so we felt that the school was far too good for the community. It made a huge contribution to the community in terms of the money that it brought into town, and we didn't want to see that stop if we could help that. And so our discussions with Morris ended up, and the only way that we could do that was if we were to buy the school and keep it open. And one thing led to another, and that's what happened. So we ran the school for 10 years. And one of the things that we did, you know, in the way that we marketed was we talked to the students about why did they choose to come to Whitianga. You know, because you could go to a language school anywhere in the country. Why did they choose Whitianga? The more common thing was to go into a big city where there was lots of nightlife. So it was a particular type of student that came here. And almost invariably, when we asked them, they would say, oh, because of the nature. Oh. That was what it was. So that was the environment we had, the bush, the beaches and those sorts of things. So we sort of thought, well, if that's what's bringing the students to us, then maybe we should be making some contribution to our environment as a way of saying thank you, I guess, for dragging the students to us. So we started to look for what we could do. And from that beginning, we were able to change a few of the activities that we ran in the afternoons to be environmentally based. And we started the nursery with those students. You know, I can still remember the first two students that were, there was three actually, the day that we started the nursery. There was a Swiss girl called Natasha, a Japanese girl called Natsuki, and a German boy called Peter Law, who was our very first intern at the school. And together we went and we dug up some cabbage trees and some flaxes, and we put them in bags on our lawn at home. And that was the beginning. And you know, that number of plants grew quite quickly. We made application to a couple of funds for some money, and we were surprised that, you know, that we actually got a little bit of money and were able to knock the nursery into shape. And suddenly we had, 5,000 plants. And a year or two later, we were looking for somewhere to start planting these plants. So that's really how it started. We did it for about 7 years under the guise of the language school. So the language school basically supported the nursery. And we did riparian planting. We grew a lot of calorie trees and planted calories where we could. We began a trap line or doing a trap line as part of the Project Kiwi. Over in the Whitianga, and we just picked up little projects that we could, where we could take a group of students in the afternoon, do something for 3 hours, and then that significantly built on what had been done before, and it was operating really well. So about 7 years that happened, and we had a number of things on the go, and then in 2019. We found out we were going to lose the lease on the building, okay? And the building was a unique place. Like a lot of the heart and the spirit of the school was associated with the building. It was an old, the place, an old Cowrie villa, and it was full of life and heart, and so without that building, we had to reassess. And the cost of actually finding another place to go that was going to be effective was very difficult, because we needed to be able to have. Well, we had 5 classrooms in that building, and every summer we had to find other places to go, to overflow into. So we really needed 7 rooms. And there weren't many places in Whitianga that offered 7 rooms, especially rooms big enough to operate as a classroom. And while we tried to find a solution, it wasn't forthcoming. It was interesting though, because once we put the word out that the school was going to close, there was an amazing outpouring from the community. The community realised the value of the school, and we had lots and lots of people come to us and say, look, how can we keep the school open? But one thing led to another, and the circumstances were such that we couldn't find a solution. Mainly it was because we couldn't get a lease that would give us any certainty into the future.
Right. Yep.
But we had to book our students into the future. And I didn't feel very comfortable booking students 6 months in the future when I didn't know if I was going to book them.
Fair enough.
So that was what in the end led to the closure of the school, and we were pretty upset and brassed off at the time, I guess it'd be fair to say. But 6 months later, COVID arrived.
Yes. That's right. Yes.
So,
Some things just
some things maybe meant
they
to
just
happen.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened at that point was a number of those people who had come to support the school or to help us try and find a way to keep the school open, they still remained in the conversation as I started to say, it seems ridiculous to stop this environmental work. I've got to do something, or I didn't have to do something, I suppose, but I wanted to do something. The environmental work was all set up. Why don't we keep it going? And there was enough support. I could find enough support. At this time, we had one of the staff members who was an ex-student, Alicia, was with us, and she'd worked hard in the environment projects with us. And so we sat down and had a chat one day because she wasn't sure what she was going to do either. And we thought, well, we can keep doing this. We can keep these projects going, and maybe there's some value to our community. So that's what we did, and we got a few good people around us. And over the next 6 months or so, the trust was formed. And once the trust was formed, it's very difficult for me as an individual to go and find funding for these sorts of projects because individuals or even some of the bigger funds aren't so sure that I'm not making a quid out of this myself. But once we're a trust, you have a vehicle that those organisations can trust.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you have some credibility, and that allowed us to acquire funding to make the thing start to roll. And with that funding, we were able to build the nursery to the level that we have. We're now able to self-fund to a certain extent, and we've got a strong enough base now that we can keep going. As I said to you guys before, the strength of the whole organisation will come down to participation of other people. This is volunteers.
Yep.
There may well be a time in the future, I don't know, there may be a time that we can afford to employ more than one person. That's always a possibility, depending on the success of the nursery. And how much we want to grow it, but really we need volunteers to make the stuff happen. We can look at just one plant that we grow for the dunes, and we want 15,000 of them next year for just one plant. So there's quite a lot of work to make that happen, and only a small window of opportunity to do it in. Right. So we have a group of great volunteers who turn up when they can. We have regular working bees. There's a regular working bee on a Tuesday morning, usually at the nursery, and the people who are from our list who are available come along. Sometimes it's one or two. Sometimes it's 6 or 7. And so we get work done around the nursery. Usually potting up or pricking out or those sorts of jobs. We also have another working bee on a Friday that is we coordinate, but is overseen to a certain extent by the council's coastal restoration coordinator, and we work on the dunes. So weeding, planting sometimes. But mainly just keeping control of what we have.
Right. Kim, you said that you had a farm before.
Yes.
How big was the farm?
It was only a small farm, what we would call a family farm.
Yep.
So 150 acres, and we milked about 180 cows.
You before we started the show, you said something like, "Oh, sometimes you have to do things twice." Actually, we've done a few things twice because sometimes
Yes.
you do it, it's not that right, and then you get it again. Are there things that you look back on the farming practice, or things that nowadays that you don't have a farm anymore, and then you see what farmers are doing, that you're kind of like, "Oh, this could be done in a different way, maybe"?
Yeah, look, that's an interesting one because I hear it's a nice to have the opportunity to say this, I suppose, because I hear a lot of criticism of our farming community, and sure, you know, one of the reasons that I'm doing what I'm doing is because there were practices in my day that I, you know, probably wouldn't be that proud of. You know, but they were the practices in those days, and when I look at the farming community today, most of them are doing an awful lot more for the environment than they get credit for.
Yeah.
You know, that would be true. I don't think I can think of any sector of the economy where the individuals do as much as farmers do and get as much, you know, negative feedback from the rest of the community. But you know, there's huge planting projects on lots and lots of our farms, lots of environmental awards that farmers are receiving and competing for, and there is a huge amount of that work done. So while some of the practices in the early days, you know, they weren't ideal, mostly the industry is doing its best. I don't think for one moment that they're there, you know, that they're but they're doing plenty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And it's sometimes it sounds like I'm going for exclusively like animals, but I'm actually opening my mind so much about it, understanding that. Well, I always knew, but like people always bring up pesticides and all that stuff to grow vegetables and stuff, you know. Like so I'm aware that it's a huge thing. You know, I'm always careful that I don't go targeting one group because we know that it's essential for us to survive, and we have to find the best ways. Actually, Thomas sent me a video today. I have to pay a bit more attention, but it's this couple that. Grew a lot of food from like 1/4 of an acre close to Thames or something like. So we know that nowadays we know more.
Yep.
Right. So that's what I was asking, you know, because I can see time giving you a lot of experience, you know, like showing you like, oh, if we can guide, if we can show these people, you know, like that are interesting, better ways maybe. Yeah,
and I think also that there's two scales, aren't there? You know, there is that small scale operation where you can be more organic, more, you know, you can do things that way, and I guess taking that that modus operandi and putting it into the bigger farming practices is a challenge. You know, some of our bigger farming practices, our bigger farms, perhaps have gone too far in the direction of size, and we see some of that coming back. Yeah. You know, when I was growing up, 100 cows would feed a family. You know, a family could operate very successfully on a 100-cow farm. Well, it's just not possible anymore. So you know, we, through the time that we were farming, were 180 cows, and we called that a one-man farm. But there would be very few farms that size anymore. You know, that bottom line has kept pushing people to be bigger and bigger, just so that they can meet the costs that are associated with the industry that they're in. Right. So it's got more and more difficult. And you know, there's a lot of knock-on stuff that happens as farms get bigger. Because when I started farming, you know, I went and worked for a farmer who did everything on the farm, and so he taught me everything that was done on the farm. But today, when you go onto a farm that milks 700 cows, you might go as the tractor driver, or you might go as the calf rearer, or you might just come in at milking time and milk the cows. So that whole rounded experience that we used to get taught, it's not as easy to get it today, and so we find it more and more difficult to get New Zealanders stepping into those farm roles, and so many of our farms are run with overseas labour, and of course that's been a problem, isn't it? So there's quite a change afoot, and just where it go. When I speak to my contemporaries who are still farming, many of them, they say to me, because I'll often say, "Oh, gee, the payout's high. Oh, look at that payout." But they say to us, "Crikey, Dick, we need every cent of that because the expenses that we have now are going through the roofs." So it's not an easy solution.
Would you run a farm, Christine? Would you take the family, buy a piece of land?
I already told you that cows freak me out.
But I was reading that now in New Zealand, the milking sheep is.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know you milk sheep.
Yeah.
They have milked goats for a long time, but they milk sheep now too.
Oh,
Milk sheep now too.
There you go.
Yep.
Nah, too much.
Nah, it's just the unpredictable. I've already said this.
Unpredictable. Yeah, Christine is not a big fan of cows.
Not a big fan of the cows.
Not a big fan of the big face.
Yeah.
Kim, what's the relationship between bringing natives back to the environment with animals and that life that, does it actually work that way, that you might bring animals that were not around and the conservation movement, I guess, what we're trying to do is to re-establish the wildlife that was here. We have New Zealand's been unique in that it developed in isolation from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
We for millions of years, if you like, but for a very, very long time, there were no people or very few people here, and the fauna here developed in its own way, and that's why kiwis and many of our other birds don't fly, because there was no need to fly, because there were no mammals here. There were 2 bats. And I think even the bats, at least one of them, couldn't fly either.
Bats! Come on, man.
But we had no predators except predators from the sky. There was a massive eagle called the Haast eagle, but everything else, the wildlife actually found itself safer on the ground in many instances than in the air. So our native birds in particular have developed in isolation to the rest of the world, and they didn't develop really any safety mechanisms or any mechanisms to prevent attack, because they didn't need them. And so when this all changed and mammals were introduced to New Zealand, then many of our species were unable to protect themselves. And that's why we've lost so many, or that's one of the reasons we've lost so many species. So rats came. Rats. There were ship rats, and then rats came with the Maori as well. And dogs, and rabbits was another problem. And the rabbit story is interesting because the early farmers, they brought cattle and sheep with them, but they didn't want to eat the cattle and sheep to protect, to feed themselves, because they needed to build the numbers of the herd, and they wanted a red meat that they could eat. And
Rabbits.
what breeds quickly? What can we? And
Rabbits.
they brought rabbits. And that was fine for a while
Until
they
we stopped eating them.
until they stopped eating them.
Interesting, eh?
Yeah, and then
Very-
suddenly we had this
Wow.
massive rabbit problem, and once it began to affect the grass that they wanted to feed their cows and their sheep, then it was a problem.
That was a big
There's
problem.
a massive problem in Matarangi rabbits. There's so many.
Really?
Yeah, there's so
What?
many. You drive at night time and there's like, to be fair, I've never seen a stray cat on the road, but I've seen like at least 5 rabbits, like just on the one little bit of road. There's so many, so many.
So,
Wow.
so what did the early settlers do to fix the rabbit problem?
Bring cats.
It was
Oh.
worse than that.
All the possums?
No, they thought back to home. What deals with the rabbit problem at home? Stoats.
Oh,
So they brought stoats to New Zealand to control the rabbits. And I think that
what
the
controls the stoats?
nothing. And I think
Kim controls
Yeah.
the stuff.
no, I don't.
Those little wooden traps you see everywhere.
Yeah, but that's what they're
Yeah.
for. But the stoats had been in New Zealand for about an hour and a half, and they figured out that kiwis were easier to catch than rabbits. And therein lies the problem. Therein lies the problem. And stoats, they multiply. They're terrible little beasties, really. And we can't control the stoats well enough yet. And so our kiwi numbers are being decimated by stoats and to a lesser extent weasels. And the bigger one of the family is the ferret. But
And those are big in Kuatunu too. You see them cross the road.
95% of the kiwi chicks that are born in New Zealand are killed as chicks.
Oh wow.
95%.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an incredibly high number. And areas like our Project Kiwi up here, they're making really good headway and bringing that survival rate up a lot. But it's only a small area,
Yeah.
So predator control is hugely important.
Are possums still the biggest problem in New Zealand, or you would say that the stoats and
Well, it depends what you're looking at.
Right.
If you're looking at kiwi protection, then stoats are the biggest problem.
right?
But if you're looking at our native bush, one of the things we used to talk about with the students is, the students would always relate New Zealand to sheep. New Zealand, lots of sheep. And, I would tell them there's more possums in New Zealand than there are sheep. And and at one stage there was way more possums. So just say there was 35 million possums. 35 million in New Zealand. It's an awful lot.
It's a lot.
And I don't actually know the numbers, but if you think about it, how much leaf matter off a tree could a possum eat in a night? Could they eat half a kilo?
So do you think we should feel less bad about hitting them on the roads?
You should aim for them.
Oh, Kim.
Sorry.
I was waiting to bring that topic to the table because I actually had this. I remember
Do
having
you
this.
aim for them or do you swerve?
I swerve.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I
Me
feel
too.
very bad to hit anything. Yeah. So I actually had this conversation with Alicia once because I don't eat animals, right? But like I try to make sense of things. It's not because I do something that it means that it's right for the world. So I just trying to make sense. And we had this healthy debate that she was saying, but they're destroying the thing. And I'm like, yeah, but they were introduced by men. It's men ruining once and then ruining twice by killing it, and we were just, of
Yeah.
course, very friendly and funny, but like, it's kind of it's a big problem because it is right. Men brought all these things to the country for some reason without actually thinking about the consequences.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the numbers are horrific because, if it was half a kilogram of leaves, and maybe that's too much, but that's 17 or 18
It's a lot.
million kilograms a night, every night.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So I understand that maybe vasectomy is not the best way, but is there any other thing?
Or some hunting.
What was that
I was
look?
like, what?
Is there any alternative for like stopping them from reproducing or something? I don't know. I'm just I don't know.
Look, there's not that I'm aware of at the moment.
Okay.
But you will have heard of the term predator-free New Zealand 2050. And when that term was bandied about originally, everyone, including those that I know in conservation, sort of thought, well, that's a bit ridiculous. I don't think we can do that. The problem is so large, but organisations have got behind it. There's government money and there's really strong organisational work driving towards predator-free 2050, and there's been significant progress. And now the people who head those organisations who used to say, I don't think we can do that, are now saying, I do think we can do that. It is feasible, but we probably need a shift in technology. We probably need something to happen. And it may be something to do with the breeding cycle. I don't know what it will be, but some shift in technology will probably happen to help us get there. There are parts of the South Island where they have some natural boundaries like rivers and things where they have really intensively trapped. There's probably toxin drops to bring the numbers down, and then heavy trapping in those areas where you don't get much migration in and out, and they've brought numbers of pests where there was 10,000 possums or rats or whatever it was, and they've brought those numbers down to 50 to 100. And they set up stations that feed mayonnaise. Yeah, a lot of the predators are attracted to mayonnaise, and
That's random.
Because of egg, I would say egg, right? They eat the eggs. Would that be a thing?
Yeah,
Mayonnaise based?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure why. Maybe it's the smell. Maybe it's but mayonnaise seems to be a very effective bait, and with cameras, and a certain number of these stations, they can locate one animal that's one of those 50 that's left, or one of those 10 that's left, and the cameras are motion censored, so that when the animal comes into the area where the cameras are located, we can see him. He'll come back because he likes the bait that's being used, and they will dispatch a person to go out and deal with that one animal. And so they're actually really reducing the numbers down in those specific areas where they've targeted. So there is hope.
There are ways.
There is hope.
Yeah.
And as long as people are prepared to get involved, this is the issue. There's got to be people involved. We could start a program here in Whitianga, for example, because there are plenty of towns around New Zealand that have said, hey, we're going to get rid of the predators out of our town. But you would need people committed to doing the work that needs to be done.
Kim, you said something about probably the 1080. Was that like the
No, I didn't say 1080.
That was something about the chemicals that people drop it. I don't understand anything about it. It just seems to me a little bit strange dropping some chemicals to kill animals in the bush. Do you know something about that? Or?
Yeah, look, it's one of those topics that it's controversial. There are people on both sides of the argument, and people with very strong opinions on both sides of the argument. I think that over time, the toxins that are being used have been refined and are not as bad as perhaps they once were. Most of the people who work in that field are of the opinion that if we could replace 1080 with some or toxins with something better, that we would do that. But at the moment, there is no better alternative. You know, to make a difference to that 35 million that we are dealing with, particularly when many of them are in places that are inaccessible. And look, you know, I don't profess to know the answer to this one, but I certainly know that people working in the field have said to me that if you go into a valley that is badly infested with predators, you will hear no bird life. But if you go through and there is a toxin program run, and you go back just 6 months later, you will be absolutely astounded at the bird life that has come back just in that period of time.
Yeah.
So it does work, and you know, I guess it depends where you sit on that line as to what is the cost of achieving the goal at the end, and what can you personally feel comfortable with. You know, for me, I want to go into the bush and hear the birds and see the birds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, in smaller areas, you know, you can do it with traps.
Yeah.
If you persist over a period of time. But often you do need, I think you need a hand, or you need a head start, or you need a leg up, or whatever, to make the progress that you need to make. So it's a controversial thing, you know.
Yeah.
It really is controversial, and I don't think you'll ever get consensus, or you know,
No.
you'll never get agreement across the board.
No.
But I think where we all do agree is that the possums do immeasurable damage to our bush. The stoats do immeasurable damage to our kiwi population, and the stoats and the rats, they also do immeasurable damage to our overall bird population.
We need to throw them all back to Australia, man. 'Cause
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have possums
Well,
there.
I think we could call them the 601s or something, you know. Just send them all back.
Yeah.
And it's because there is the opposite, right? They actually are they.
Oh yeah, they're protected.
they're
The possums are
protected.
protected. Yeah.
How crazy!
Here, no.
No, in
There.
Australia.
In Australia, yeah, they love them.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
send them
absolutely.
back.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is, you see that in Australia, the main tree is a eucalypt. The eucalypts have hard leaves.
Yeah.
They're not easy to digest. The possums don't even grow
Demolish.
very big in
Yeah.
Australia. They're nothing like ours. Here in New Zealand, the possum, exactly the same animal because it came from Australia, is developed quite differently. You know, it's
When you see them on the road, they're huge.
They're
Oh,
huge,
yeah.
eh?
They're
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you almost swerve so they don't wreck your car.
yeah, and sometimes they're twice as big. And
Yeah.
you know, in Australia, where they've only got bloody gum leaves to eat, they're vegetarians. But here in New Zealand, the possums are not vegetarians; they're omnivores, and they eat kiwi eggs.
How crazy!
You know, they will eat birds' eggs. There's lots and lots of footage of them eating birds' eggs. They'll eat wetters and other insects, and certainly eggs and baby birds. So they're far more competitive here.
Yeah.
And they're far bigger.
Possums, you're not making my life easier defending you when you eat the babies, man.
No.
I'm trying, but don't eat the babies.
I swerve for you.
God damn it, don't eat the babies, man. Kim, I guess Taylor kind of like started the thing with water. We're asking about 1080. I was not here for a minute, but I think we can touch a little bit there, the importance of the water in our regions and in our region, and what's happening. What is the connection between what you do and knowing how the access to water is and
Yeah, look, water is a problem to us, because in our dry summers, we struggle in the nursery, but we also struggle in the wild, and it appears to me that part of the climate change that we're experiencing, or we're beginning to experience, is longer and hotter periods in the summer. That may well lead to some of the species of plants in particular that we have been used to being around here, finding it difficult to survive. I know that in the dry summer of 3 years ago, a really dry summer that we had here, many kauri trees died. And these are kauri trees, some of them were 50 and 60 years old. So they have survived through whatever dry periods had occurred in that time, in the past. But we lost a lot of kauri trees in that time. And maybe that's saying to us, well, the northern boundary of that species may not be where we thought it was. I mean, the kauri basically originally grew from halfway down the North Island northwards, to right up to Northland. But they really struggled through that particular summer, and many other natives as well. So the availability of water is a problem, but it's not a problem I've noticed in the last month.
Not at all.
That's where I wanted to go again. Like, just not putting you like to pick a side or whatever. Like, but from your experience, from what you've been seeing throughout these years, what are good moves to keep this water or to make it to do something that in the long term could be a good thing in your view?
Look, I don't know. I really don't know, Leo. I think that when we look out the window through July and August, and it rains and it rains and it rains, we find ourselves saying, why on earth can't we store some of this water? Why on earth can't we store it? But the ability to store water, or the amount that we need, is a very big project that you would struggle to get people to agree to. So much of what I run into, what I see when I do this environmental work, it's not easy because I thought we're all on, all of us environmentalists were on one team, heading in one, but we're not. There are so many various views of how to deal with one problem. If I want to cut down a tree, because it's a weed species, I'll find someone come to me and say, "No, you shouldn't have cut it down. You
Don't cut trees.
you should have poisoned it. We want it poisoned, and and if you look to poison a tree, so that it will remain standing and not, lie on the ground or whatever it happens to be, then someone will come along and say, well, why didn't you cut it down?
Yeah.
And then if you cut it down, someone else will say, you should never cut down a tree.
Don't cut. Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to matter what we're doing.
Yeah.
There's some difficulty in getting everyone on board with the way that we're doing it. If we plant a tree, then someone will tell us it's the wrong tree. We should have planted something else there. So I struggle a little bit with just dealing with some of the issues that we have to deal with just to do the good work that we're trying to do, or the work that we think is good work.
Yeah.
We just want to keep going. We want to keep making a difference, but it gets frustrating.
It feels to me like that sometimes we just don't trust enough the people who are doing the work for a long time and pay attention to the timeline, because like you just said, like we've been watching for so many years.
Yeah.
We can make a prediction of these years, and everyone is entitled to have an opinion, and that's what we're noticing with this show, by saying that we're gonna have a chat with someone, suddenly it's like, you cannot have a chat.
Yeah,
You're like, what the
uproar.
fuck? Who are you?
Yeah.
But it's still, going back to the main point, is like, it's nice to trust, or at least to give more attention to the people who are doing the work, So that's when I'm asking, and I say, I don't want to put you in a position of saying something, but you're out there, I'll tell you something and then you tell me if it doesn't make sense. Taylor and I, we thought about this before, because in Brazil, it's very common to have, how do we say caixa d'água? The water tank.
Yep.
So most of the houses, they have water tanks in Brazil. We still have, the public thing, the water. But it's just common practice.
Yep.
It's just common practice. You're building a house, you chuck a water tank there. And we had a chat about this and we said, wow, I don't know. It might not solve the problem. But when it comes to those extreme days of don't take a long shower, which we shouldn't be taking long showers anyway. But
Don't water your grass.
Yeah, those things. And then I'm like, man, imagine that water tank in at least 55% of the houses of this area. It maybe could do a little bit better. So.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and water tanks are becoming more common, I think. There's also the issue of rainwater, sort of stormwater, and the control of stormwater. So if you build a house in many parts of Whitianga, you actually have to have a tank, usually underground, to catch the stormwater off your roof so it doesn't go straight into the system, because the system can't handle it all at once. So, as much as we talk about perhaps we need tanks to provide the drinking water that we need, we also need tanks for controlling our stormwater. And that's why you see often when you drive along Buffalo Beach on a fine day, there's all that water pouring out. Where's that come from? That's where it comes from.
Is that because I need to study more, because we want to bring more people to talk about the three waters? So that's kind of what's happening, right? It's an investment to these areas, regardless of what it is or what is not, but that's the talk, right? It's investing in areas.
Yeah, I think it's not a problem, a topic that I know enough about. But
same.
certainly, if you think of New Zealand, we're only 200 years old, and so our towns have all been built in a short time frame, and all of the infrastructure, or a lot of the infrastructure that's there, is wearing out at the same time, because we haven't had 300 years or 500 years or 1,000 years of civilization where, as things break down, they've been repaired. We've built all of the stuff, but a lot of it's getting old at the same time.
There's still the same things when we first started, when we first built, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of that stuff is wearing out at the same time, and there's a huge amount of investment needed. And so how do we manage that properly? And who pays, and who owns the infrastructure that's in place? And if a particular town has invested some money and done some work on their infrastructure, how are they compensated for it when all of that stuff's being taken away and given to someone else? So that's where the problem lies, and I don't think there's any easy solutions.
No.
It's very funny. I was coming back from work today, and was this big sign: "Stop three waste water."
Yeah.
Huge sign in town, and behind the sign in this house was this guy washing his boat.
For like looking somewhere else and doing the thing. Yeah. And again, like and that's why I appreciate what you said, Kim, with like, like there will be always different opinions. But like I think we got to this time that humanity lives comfortably. Not everybody. Because for people to live comfortably means that a lot of people live in the shit.
Yeah.
But the people who live in the shit don't have a voice. So we don't know. But the ones who live comfortably, they kind of don't want to let go of that. And I'm not trying to be judgmental, but as I age, I realize that you want more comforts, it's better if you can just sit back a little bit, and kind of chill, So appreciating again the effort you put, because you actually out there, making the opposite, like saying to us, I'm doing my part.
Yeah.
But so where I want to go with this is a bit, I always like the philosophical moments. Does it take disaster to learn a lesson? Like, do you think it might be a point where something might happen and groups will be like, because I feel you. You guys are doing the work, but it feels like people just like to read the news. Oh, good on them. Yeah. They're doing it. When actually, if everybody did just a tiny bit, it would be a bit easier.
Yeah, I think that's true. But a lot of this stuff, you need to want to do it. I don't think going along and turning up is sufficient. You've got to understand why are we asking people to come out and plant the dunes? Why are we trying to restore bits of forest? Why do we want our bird life back? And if people understand what's driving it, then they're more likely to buy into the issues or buy into doing their bit of the work. I think we'll always be a minority, the people that are actually out there doing it, and look, I only do it because I want to do it. There's no, I don't feel any compulsion to do it. I see a lot of good people putting time and effort in through their jobs, and struggling to make the headway that they should, because we can't afford as a community, or we don't seem to afford as a community, to put enough people on this particular front line. And so unless some of us who are working in this field support those people, then those people get very frustrated and burned out. And so to keep the real workforce going, it's important that some of our community actually supports those people. And I work with those people all the time, and we've got some wonderful people, from our council and WRC and other organisations in this town where people are fronting up. But unless we support them, we're going to lose them.
That's right.
Yeah. What's something as a community people can do to help that?
Well, I think our planting days, on the beach are a classic example. When I don't want to be too critical, but when I look around the communities that we go to do these plantings, all of the other communities are smaller than Whitianga. But in those communities, there are often very strong dune care groups or beach care groups or conservation groups who turn up to those things. But in Whitianga, where we've got a much bigger population base, we struggle to get people to turn out. And so, you know, I'd like to just put out a call to people to look out for those things. It's only a day, you know. For them, it's only a day or half a day. We never do it for a day, you know. It's usually, if enough people turn out, one of those plantings is 2 hours. And then there's a barbecue afterwards usually, and people go their merry way. It's not an arduous task, but we still struggle to get people to turn out. And so you know, I just think that if people want to take advantage of the environment that we live in, you know, I said before, I think our greatest asset here is our beach. But our bush, you know, and whatever else that we aspire to protect, then pitching in a little bit when it's required is what we need to do. And that's really what drives us, I suppose, is as an organisation. This is one way that we can do our bit. You know, I mean, I've been around for a long time, and if in the next few years I can give a little bit back, then that's a good thing. And one of the things that we really like about the trust is that where we can, we take young people and try and share our values, and teach them the things that we've learnt by doing twice.
That's right.
Yeah.
I appreciate this, and I just want to comment on something because that relates to what you were saying before with the language school. A lot of those students, they were actually paying.
Yes.
Well, actually, they were paying to learn something by doing, because that was the slogan, right? And developing this love, you know, like, and care, and I'm not like, it sounds like I'm being repetitive, but like all these students that I talk to that spend time here and went to the language school, they talk about it with so much passion about the time, you know, like, because they feel part of it.
Yep.
They were there, you know, doing the work, supporting the nature that they loved so much. And in a way, that's kind of what we're doing here. A lot of people come to us and say, whoa, this is big, and you guys are putting all this money and time for, and I'm like, this place welcomed us, you know, like, we love this place. Like, we want to talk to these people, and we want to bring more cool things for this place. Like, I won't say upsetting, because we actually don't care, but like, it gets a bit frustrating when people think that we could be trying to make a move or do something that you're like, wow, like, why would I shoot on my own foot, you know, like, it doesn't make sense. Like, we care about the place where we're at, and we just want this place to be better.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you start thinking about that, and you start thinking about the students, then you can see what Whitianga can offer. Because we had so many students who returned. They came back again and sometimes again and again, and they weren't actually coming back to learn more English. You know, I mean, that was the modus operandi, I guess. They got a visa and came to the school, but they weren't coming back for that. They were coming back to Whitianga. Yeah. And to, you know, the vibe and the things that you can do here. And all we did was we packaged it up in a way that it was attractive to them. But we have all of that stuff here. You know, the stuff that attracted those students. You know, we've got a project right now that I'll touch on across the river. So directly across the river from town, you know, you look at those bush-clad hills. There's a piece of land that sits in the middle of those hills that is called the Backdrop Trust. Or the land is owned by the Backdrop Trust, and the land is 150 acres, and it was given as a gift by Joe McNeil, who was Joe and Derek McNeil were a farming family from the other side of the river there. They came to New Zealand in 1951 from England. They bought that land over there, or quite a bit of land, and they lived and farmed here. And in about 2008, 9, something like that, Joe McNeil was nearing the end of her life, and she wanted to leave a legacy. And she decided to donate that land so that it could be the backdrop to Whitianga in perpetuity. Okay, so she set up a trust that owns the land, and they put a QE2 covenant on it, and that's a legal covenant that sits over the land and says what it can be used for, and that covenant is there forever. And that piece of land, I don't know what it would be worth. 20 million, probably 50 million. I don't know. If it was ever to be developed, but that land's been basically given to the people of Whitianga. So the Backdrop Trust is administered by her grandson, who lives in Auckland, and she had a vision that she wrote before she died, for what would happen to that piece of land. Now, when our trust was being formed, one of our trustees knew about the story of this piece of land, and we got in touch with Tony McNeil and said, we'd like to help promote the vision for that piece of land. And he was delighted because we're a local entity, and it brings some of the push to make this thing happen right back into town. So we've actually now signed a memorandum of understanding with the Backdrop Trust, and together we're trying to push those values and the vision that Joe McNeil had for that piece of land.
Fantastic.
Cool, yeah.
Wow.
So that means that the vision is that the predators are removed, that the exotic weed species are removed, and that we restore the forest, and then we intend to put a series of tracks through that land. There are tracks through it already, but that the public can actually enjoy.
Yeah.
And today the first of the wilding pines were cut down. So there's a project starting right now across the river to try and clear up the big wilding pine problem that sits there, not only on the Backdrop Trust land, it extends either way, but we're hoping that we can get all those pines cleared up, and advance that vision, so that in the future, part of our vision is that you can sit down by the marina or down the waterfront and actually hear kiwis calling across the river.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's no reason why that can't happen. The kiwis aren't too far away from there, and you get we have a great partnership with the Purangi Conservation Trust, who are on the other side of the river, and they are great. They specialise in predator control, and so they're managing the predator control in there and making great headway already. And when I walk in that area now, already I believe we're starting to see more birds than over the past few years when we've been going there. So that's a great project, and it's right on our doorstep.
That's inspiring.
Cool
That's legacy for me. That's what it means. When people say the legacy, what you're gonna leave.
That's pretty cool.
Like you live in the life of the people who are still around. Like you mean something. You left something for the people here.
That's cool. Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool project, and it's a very special piece of bush. It was farmed. And I think a fire went through it at one stage, and so what we have there is regeneration, and there are a lot of pine trees. The pine trees were actually cut down about 15 years ago, the big pines, and because there was no organised follow-up behind the cutting of those pines, everything that's over there, almost everything, is regeneration. So, we've got 15-year-old pines that have regenerated. They're populating that whole face. We need to take them out, and then we need to have people, we need to have a program by which we keep them out.
Yeah.
So that we don't get them growing again. But these are these opportunities are around, and we just need to make sure that as a community we get behind these things and we make them happen.
Yes.
Cool.
For our audience listening to us, there you go. There are ways to get involved. That's for sure. Kim, this is the kind of project that we like to promote, as I was telling you, that I like to spread the word. So, social media, is it the best way to reach out? You guys have a website?
Yeah, we do have a website. I don't know if
We can post a link.
if I put enough time into it. Yes, no, we do have a website.
MBTE?
Yes, MBET, MBET. .co.nz.
Nice.
Yep, mbet.co.nz.
And pretty solid on social medias as well.
Yes.
So yes.
Yep, we're there on Facebook and Insta. Yeah.
Nice. For the people watching us, we tagged them on our stories on Instagram and Facebook and everywhere, so it will be
fantastic,
easy to find.
Awesome.
Kim, thank you so much. Thanks so much for all the work you've been doing throughout the years and for coming, obviously, and having a chat.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been great fun. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Christine,
Thank you for having me.
thanks for coming back.
I'm so glad I made it this time.
Yes, so are we.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We didn't talk much about the cows, about the scary cows.
No, we're not talking about cows.
We're good, Taylor? Awesome. So for you watching us at home, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We're back on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Send us a message. Tell us what you think about the shows. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and don't follow us on the streets. Bye. Ciao.